Hello, today we're going to put together this cement mixer from Harbor Freight. It's the 3.5 inch or 3.5 cubic foot cement mixer. So we're going to put that together today. Just to give you a few bits of information. You can get it for around $209. It's the list price, and then of course you get the 20% off coupon, or sometimes they run it for sale for 20% off. Yeah, if you're familiar with Harbor Freight, you know how they work. Also, just to give you an idea, the weight of it, it's about 112 pounds in the box, and the size of the box that's in inches, 32 inches by 28 by 15, so it easily fit into my Honda Element, which I don't have the seats in the back of my Honda Element, but you could fit about 4 of them in my Honda Element, well, maybe 3 of them. So easily fit into most cars, but it's a good thing to know before you go and buy it and realize you can't haul it away. So I'm going to do a whole video here about putting this together. So first I'm going to start by cutting the strap. There's one strap, and there's 2 straps. Now I'm not really going to bore you people with that insane stuff, but I will show how it goes together, and I'll try to keep it to the point and brief. So please stay tuned and we'll see how well it goes together. Okay, here are all the parts after the box was opened. There's the power supply, part of the drum, another part of the drum. There's some legs over here, bag of hardware, more parts, wheel and motor, and the manual. So next step is start putting it together and see how easy it is. Well, the manual, like most of you know who have bought Harbor Freight tools, is pretty cryptic. They do have an exploded diagram in the back here, and then they have the parts list. The parts numbers don't match the parts on the bag. All the hardware bags are numbered, like here's bag 2, here's bag 6, 3, 8, 5, 4, 13, and so on. The thing is, if you got a metric rule, it's kind of nice because everything's in metric. So on the stand here, I'll show you the parts that go together, and they use these, what they call M65 bolts, which is metric 65 millimeter. And in my package here, they're number 2. Bag number 2 is going to put the 2 pieces of the stand together. So here's the one. You take your triangular bit there. Zoom in on that, and that goes in like so. And then this other bit here, and this upright, that's the foot and the handle, that goes on here. So I'll put those together and then give you a shot of that. Okay. Following their directions, you can see there's a washer and a nut. So there's 4 of those. You'll put those on, and when you do, here's what you get. Not too bad. Like I say, following the directions, make sure you do the washer on this side here of the bolts, and then the nut on the other side. So I just went back and was kind of checking over, see how many screws I had left over, and I noticed I had 2 longer 65 millimeter bolts. Those go right here in the leg, and the directions were really bad about telling me that. I only found them on an insert later. But anyhow, those are in bag number 12, those two bolts. So that just holds the stand together, makes it more sturdy. The next step is to install this handle control plate, which is this piece here. Of course, the instructions were really vague as usual. Make sure that you install it where you can see it's kind of a flange. That convex side of the flange goes back towards the drum, as so. And then it uses a short nut and bolt. And in my box here, that was in bag number 10. Now the next step is to put the arm onto the shaft there. Make sure you get your little spring up in there. There's a spring inside, and then once again, bolt, nut, and a bolt. And then you tighten it so that you, as tight as you can get it, but still move the arm out. And then you put a lock nut on there to keep it from loosening up. So I'll show you that when that's done. Here the handle's been installed. As you can see, you put the two nuts on there just to lock it all together. Now as far as the action, it's pretty sweet. Pretty easy. Okay, the next step will be to put this drum, upper part of the drum, onto the lower part of the drum there. And what I've done is I went ahead and put the gasket on there, lined up the screws, and then I'll set it on top, put the nuts, a lock washer and a nut on the other side, and tighten it up, and I'll show you what that looks like at that point. Okay, now the drum, the upper part of the drum, has been assembled to the lower part of the drum. Couple of pointers. Here's the inside view. You see there's that rubber gasket that goes all the way around on the inside. So you put the gasket on the upper drum first. Line up all your screws here. The other side, do a lock washer and the nut. For me, that was in bag number, let me take a look here, sorry. Bag number 8 was the proper hardware for that. Couple of pointers, because the directions are oh so good. You should line these arrows up. It doesn't say that in the direction, but line up that upper and lower arrow. That way the spacing on the holes works out. I put it on without looking for that arrow, and of course I had to take it off and rotate it so the arrows line up. Also in the directions it says use poly washers. I guess that's Chinese for lock washer. So the lock washers, not poly washers. Another helpful tip when you're putting the bolts in the nuts on the upper and lower barrel, you can go ahead and tip it as I did here, and that makes it easier to get to these nuts and tighten it. And of course, I'm missing a nut, so I got to find a nut that's going to fit that, and then I'll be back and we'll do the next step. Found the nut, it was on the floor, so my apologies, Harbor Freight. Here is the installation of the paddles. Once again, the directions couldn't be any less clear on these paddles. So first of all, it does say to put this pointy side down into the drum. But it didn't say anywhere that you do have to put another screw in here. And it is this screw that you put in there. And that was in my hardware bag 11 with that screw. And then these were just the shorter hex bolts. So pointy side down, make sure you screw this paddle in place so it's nice and solid. Okay, Pardon the background noise, it's raining and it's hitting my metal roof. But here's the tricky part. Here's the motor mount plate. Here's the hood right here. And the hardware for this in mine was from bag number 4. The tricky part where the directions are really cryptic is right here. This plate needs to go on the back. Stick your bolt washer through and then tighten that all up. And that's the motor mount on the bottom there and the motor housing. Here, the next step was to mount the motor hood with the bolts and nuts and washers. And that comes from hardware bag number 4. And that was pretty simple and straightforward. Now here's the pulley installed onto the motor shaft. Don't forget to put your key in there too, and a few drops of oil will help get that key in there. Then you put your screw in and snug it down. Getting close to the end now. Drop the motor in position. You know, there's 2 schools of thought on where to put the nuts and the bolts. Nut on top, nut on the bottom. In this case, put the nut on the top because if you need to adjust this motor in or out, it's easier to get a wrench underneath here and tighten the head of that bolt than to get a wrench in there. So that's how I did that. Got the belt on there. Make sure it's tensioned. This might be a touch, well, it's pretty close to good. They're saying about a 1/2 inch deflection. I might have a touch more. I might snug that up a little bit. Next step, get it wired up, and then I'll turn it on and we'll see how it looks running. And now to the wiring phase. Be sure to put your little grommet in there. Just keeps the wires from getting pinched and frayed. Switches, usually the black and the white are reversible. In this case, I just put the black under the existing black and the white right here under the existing white. Be sure to put your ground on there too. I'll make sure I get a nut on top of that ground wire. All I gotta do is put the motor cover on, and this guy's, well, cover here, and put the motor cover on, and this guy's ready to start up. Here it is in its completed glory. I must say I like the Hemi orange paint, and you Mopar guys will know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyhow, here it is running. It is noisy. There it is running. I had read a lot of reviews on this piece of equipment, and it is definitely noisy. But so what? For the price, it's pretty good, and everything else I've read about it is great. Also, all the reviews were certainly right about how horrible the directions are on it. I've put together a lot of pieces of equipment in the past, and this was by far the worst. It took probably 2.5, 3 hours, but that also was going back and forth from filming these little segments, so that slowed me down a little. But tracking down the right pieces of hardware because the directions were so bad, and the sequence in the directions was really nuts. So it was horrible directions. Hopefully this video will make it much easier for you to put it together, and hopefully it will save you a lot of time. So thanks for watching. Hope everyone enjoys this video.